While we are waiting, we are going to talk to National Trial Attorney Michael Jaafar, who is standing by with us, our legal analyst, who often joins us and gives us insight on these cases. And this one, when we're seeing a press conference where you have a prosecutor announcing formal charges, talk about the reason that they have to do this publicly. This doesn't happen in every case.
The reason they do this publicly is because this is, first of all, this is a matter of public concern. Also, there might be federal charges, perhaps for terrorism, for hate crimes. So this is something that is very, very important because it puts the public on notice. It lets people know that, potentially a dangerous killer has been taken off the street. And let's just face it, there are tons of people like Charlie Kirk who do the speaking circuit. They speak publicly, and they're probably wondering, what's going on? Is this going to happen again? So this is actually a matter of public importance. In my opinion, they do this. They're not required to do it publicly, but this is something we've grown accustomed to. And I think it's a good thing that they do it publicly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So many people wanting to know what the outcome is, what the next step is in this case. And let's talk about that, because we have this formal arraignment that's going to be happening, these charges. And we always remind people, even though there is an alleged confession in this case, we have someone turning themselves in, we have text messages, we're still likely going to hear a not guilty. But walk us through what these steps are looking like behind the scenes, Michael.
So behind the scenes, obviously, he presumably has an attorney appointed by the court. Presumably, this attorney is scrambling and figuring out what type of defense could he ever do in order to sue for some sort of a plea. Behind the scenes, on the state side and the federal government side, there's a big communication and coordination between the federal authorities and the state authorities, and they've got to decide who's going to bring the charges first. If they're going to be federal charges, they're brought in federal court. If they're going to be state charges, then they're going to be in state court. If it's going to be a combination of both, I think it's going to be in federal court. This is where the Attorney General of the state of Utah is working hand in hand with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Utah to decide who's going to bring the charges. Where, is he going to be extradited from one prison to another prison within Utah? And so this is what's happening behind the scenes. There's a ton of information being passed between these authorities. Presumably, people have flown out to Utah. Any decision maker is going to be on the ground, and they're assessing the damage, they're assessing the situation, and what charges to bring.
And yesterday we learned, this was confirmed by the Utah County Sheriff's Office, by our local affiliate that's there in Utah, that he's being held in a jail with special housing under special watch. An important point when you have someone who is such a high-profile suspect, and that he's going to be evaluated by medical staff. When we see medical staff, does that imply anything else in terms of an evaluation?
It implies mental health. That's the first thing that people jump to, and they assume. I mean, no rational, well-adjusted person would walk up to somebody, a stranger, at an event and shoot them in the neck. They just won't do that, right? So mental health is the number one evaluation. Just for the viewers to know, as I was a public defender, the overwhelming majority of times that you have crimes like this, there's mental health issues involved, right? And so when we see that there's a medical evaluation, this is par for the course in terms of what they're evaluating him for. Some of his rights are a big deal at this point, because if he has an attorney, the attorney is going to be right side by side during that evaluation. It has to be. But that's what this signifies to me, is they're looking at his mental health situation.
I'm anticipating that today, when County Attorney Gray is going to take that podium, he's going to be outlining some of the evidence that they have. Maybe not all, because some of that they will hold back. But whatever they think the public needs to know, they are going to be outlining that evidence. And we've been hearing that since this horrific shooting. Even FBI Director Kash Patel, he's been on Fox News and outlined the evidence that they have against this suspect. Let's take a listen to that together.
There was evidence, DNA evidence, that could be collected and had been collected, including a screwdriver that was found on the rooftop. Also, we went over to the scene in the wooded area where the firearm was discarded, and the firearm had a towel wrapped around it. It's important. I'll get back to that later. And I can report today that the DNA hits from the towel that was wrapped around the firearm and the DNA on the screwdriver are positively processed for the suspect in custody.
Michael Jaafar, everyone is thinking this seems to be a slam dunk for the prosecution in terms of all of the evidence that there is. There's the video, there's this DNA that you heard Director Patel talking about, and then even the alleged confession that we are likely going to be hearing about today. What do you do with this case if you are a defense attorney?
If you're a defense attorney, your whole job is to keep your client alive, and hopefully you get some sort of a plea that does not involve the worst possible case scenario, right? The death penalty or something, something along those lines. But also, I will say, Julia, I saw that interview by Kash Patel. Stuff like that kind of bothers me because this case looks like a slam dunk, but there's so many cases that are not. But so.
All right, Michael, thank you. Let's go into the press conference. It looks like we have someone at the podium.